Oliver Zarwell stood in the doorway of his study, staring at the stacks of ledgers on his desk, as though they were enemies he could not defeat. The leather-bound books seemed to mock him with their neat rows of numbers and letters that swirled together into meaningless shapes before his eyes. He was 28 years old, the sole inheritor of Zarwell Estate after his father's death 3 years prior, and he carried a secret that would ruin him if anyone discovered the truth. He could not read. His father had tried to teach him as a boy, hiring tutors from the nearest town, bringing scholars to the estate, even attempting to teach Oliver himself during long winter evenings by the fire. Nothing worked. The letters refused to stay still on the page, dancing and reversing themselves until Oliver's head ached and his heart filled with shame. Eventually, his father had given up, dismissing it as stubbornness or laziness, never understanding that Oliver wanted desperately to learn but simply could not make sense of the marks on paper. When his father lived, it had been manageable. The old man handled all the accounts, all the correspondence, all the business of running the estate. Oliver worked the land alongside their hired hands, managed the livestock, repaired fences and buildings, and learned everything he could about the practical aspects of farming. He was strong, capable, and well-liked by the workers. But none of that mattered when his father died suddenly of a fever, leaving Oliver alone with an estate drowning in debts he could not even comprehend. For 3 years, Oliver had stumbled along, pretending to understand the letters that arrived from creditors, nodding seriously when the estate steward spoke of accounts and balances, and signing documents he could not read. The steward, Marston, had seemed trustworthy at first. He had worked for Oliver's father for a decade. But 6 months ago, Marston had abruptly departed in the night, taking with him a significant sum from the estate coffers and leaving behind a tangled mess of unpaid bills, false records, and forged transactions. Oliver discovered the theft only when creditors began appearing at his door, demanding payment for debts he did not know existed. He tried to explain, tried to sort through the ledgers himself, but the numbers meant nothing to him. He could count coins well enough, could manage simple transactions in his head, but the complex accounting that filled page after page of the ledgers might as well have been written in a foreign language. Now it was late autumn, and the situation had become desperate. 3 different creditors had threatened legal action. The workers had not been paid in 2 months. The livestock needed winter feed he could not afford to purchase. And worst of all, Lord Pemberton from the neighboring estate had made it clear that if Oliver could not settle his debts by the end of the month, Pemberton would buy Zarwell Estate for a fraction of its worth, and Oliver would be left with nothing. He had 1 week. Oliver turned away from the study and walked through the manor house that had been his home since birth. It was a good house, solidly built of stone and timber, with a dozen rooms and a wide hearth in the main hall. His grandfather had built it with his own hands, clearing the land from wilderness, establishing the farm that had sustained 3 generations. The thought of losing it made Oliver's chest tighten with grief and rage. He stepped outside into the cool evening air, breathing deeply to calm himself. The sun was setting behind the western hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The fields stretched out before him, some already harvested, others lying fallow. The barn stood solid and red in the distance. Chickens pecked in the yard. It was a peaceful scene, but Oliver felt no peace. A commotion at the front gate caught his attention. He heard raised voices, the sound of something heavy being moved. Oliver walked toward the gate, his hand instinctively moving to the knife at his belt. Bandits had been a problem this year, displaced by the wars in the northern territories. When he rounded the corner of the house, he stopped in surprise. Two of his farmhands, Gregory and Thomas, were dragging what appeared to be a body through the gate. No, not dragging, supporting. A figure slumped between them, barely conscious. "Master Zarwell," Gregory called out, his face flushed with exertion. "We found her on the northern road just past your property line. She collapsed right in front of us." As they came closer, Oliver saw that the figure was female and clearly not human. Green skin, visible even in the fading light, pointed ears, small tusks protruding from her lower jaw, an orc. "She is an orc," Thomas said unnecessarily, his voice tight with nervousness. "We should probably just leave her," but Gregory insisted. "We are not leaving an injured woman on the road," Gregory interrupted firmly. He was older than Thomas by 20 years and had a daughter of his own. Christian decency applies to all folk, green skin or not. Oliver made a decision quickly. Whatever his troubles, he was not the kind of man who left someone to die. "Bring her to the kitchen. We will get her warm and fed, figure out what is wrong." Thomas looked like he wanted to protest, but he obeyed. Together, they hauled the orc woman into the house, through the back entrance, and settled her into a chair near the kitchen fire. In the better light, Oliver could see her more clearly. She was young, perhaps close to his own age, with dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. Her clothes were travel-worn but of good quality leather trousers, a tunic that had once been dyed a rich blue but had faded with time and weather, sturdy boots. She wore no weapons that he could see, but a leather satchel was slung across her body, which she clutched even in her semi-conscious state. Her green skin was pale, which worried him. He had little experience with orcs, but he knew that pallor in any creature usually meant sickness or injury. There was no blood that he could see, no obvious wounds. "Fetch water," Oliver ordered, "and bread if we have any fresh." Thomas hurried to obey, seeming relieved to have something to do. Gregory knelt beside the orc woman, checking her pulse at her wrist. "Strong heartbeat," he reported. "I think she is just exhausted, maybe has not eaten in days." The orc woman's eyes fluttered open. They were amber-colored, Oliver noticed, striking against her green skin. They focused on him with obvious effort. "Where?" she managed to ask, her voice rough. "Zarwell Estate," Oliver said, keeping his voice gentle. "You collapsed near our property. You are safe here. We mean you no harm." She tried to sit up straighter, one hand still gripping her satchel. "I need to keep moving, cannot stay." "You can barely stand," Gregory said practically. "Rest a moment. Have some water at least." Thomas returned with a cup of water and a small loaf of bread. The orc woman looked at them with something like suspicion, but thirst and hunger won out. She drank deeply, then tore into the bread with an eagerness that confirmed Gregory's guess about starvation. "When did you last eat?" Oliver asked. She swallowed before answering. 2 days, maybe 3, I lost track." "Why are you traveling alone?" The question came out before Oliver could stop it. He knew it was probably rude, but orcs did not usually travel through human lands, especially not alone. It was too dangerous. The wars had left deep prejudices on both sides. The orc woman's expression closed off. "That is my business." "Fair enough," Oliver said, though his curiosity burned. "You are welcome to stay the night, rest and recover. We can provide a meal and a bed in the servants' quarters." She looked at him as though trying to determine if this was a trap. "Why would you help me? I am orc." "And you are also a person in need of help," Oliver said simply. "I try to be a decent man when I can manage it." Something shifted in her expression, a subtle softening. "I have coin," she said. "I can pay for food and lodging." Oliver waved this away. "Keep your coin. You are a guest, not a customer." She finished the bread and drank more water, some color returning to her face. Oliver found himself studying her features, fascinated despite himself. He had seen orcs before, of course, usually at a distance or during the tense trading sessions that sometimes occurred at border markets. But he had never been this close to one, never had a chance to observe that orc faces were not so different from human ones. She had a strong jaw, high cheekbones, a straight nose. The tusks were small and somehow elegant, curving up from her lower lip. Her expression was intelligent and wary. "What is your name?" Gregory asked, his tone friendly. "I am Gregory, that is Thomas, and this is Master Oliver Zarwell, owner of the estate." She hesitated, then seemed to decide that names were safe enough to share. "Kara, just Kara." "Well, just Kara," Oliver said, attempting a smile. "Let me show you where you can sleep. There is a room above the stable that is clean and warm, unless you would prefer—" "The stable is fine," Kara interrupted. "Better than fine, I am grateful." She stood, swaying slightly. Gregory moved to steady her, but she waved him off. "I can manage." Oliver led her outside and across the yard to the stable. The room above it had once housed a stable hand, but that position had been cut months ago when money grew tight. The space was small but tidy, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a window that looked out over the fields. "There are blankets in the chest," Oliver said, gesturing. "If you need anything else, the main house is just across the yard. We eat breakfast at dawn, and you are welcome to join us." Kara set her satchel on the bed, her movements careful, as though the bag contained something precious or fragile. "Thank you," she said, meeting his eyes directly. "This is more kindness than I expected to find in human lands." Oliver did not know what to say to that, so he simply nodded and left her to rest. That night, he lay in his own bed, staring at the ceiling, his mind churning. 1 week until Lord Pemberton came to claim the estate. 1 week to sort through 10 years of accounts that he could not raid. 1 week to save everything his family had built. It was impossible. He must have eventually slept, because he woke to pale dawn light filtering through his window. He dressed quickly and headed downstairs, surprised to find Kara already in the kitchen, talking quietly with Gregory's wife, Martha, who served as the estate's cook and housekeeper. "Morning," Martha said cheerfully when she spotted Oliver. "Your guest here was just telling me she used to work in a merchant's house in the Northern Territories. Kept their accounts, she says." Oliver's heart skipped. "Accounts?" Kara turned to face him, looking much better than she had the previous evening. The color had returned to her green skin, and her amber eyes were clear and alert. "I worked for a human merchant family for 5 years. I managed all their ledgers, tracked inventory, handled correspondence with other merchants. I have a gift for numbers and letters." The words sent a jolt of hope through Oliver, so intense it was almost painful. He tried to keep his voice casual. "That is an unusual skill." "My clan values education," Kara said, a hint of pride in her voice. "We believe knowledge is strength. I was always good with figures, so I was sent to apprentice with our clan's record keeper. When the wars came and my clan had to relocate, I left to find work among humans. The merchant family I worked for, they did not care that I was orc, only that I could do the job well." "Why did you leave them?" Oliver asked. Kara's expression darkened. "The merchant's eldest son returned from the war. He had strong opinions about orcs, made it clear I was not welcome, so I left before things could turn violent." "Where are you headed now?" "South," Kara said vaguely. "I heard there are orc settlements in the Southern Territories, beyond the Redstone Mountains. I thought I might find a place there." Oliver's mind was racing. An orc who could read and manage accounts. An orc who happened to collapse on his road at the exact moment when he desperately needed someone with precisely those skills. It seemed too fortunate to be real. "Can I show you something?" he heard himself ask. Kara looked surprised. What? I need a second opinion on some accounts. If you have time, I would appreciate your expertise. I could pay you for your consultation. She studied him for a long moment, and Oliver had the uncomfortable feeling that she could see right through him, could see the desperation he was trying to hide. But finally, she nodded. I can look. No payment necessary. You gave me shelter and food when I needed it. This is fair exchange. Oliver led her to his study, his palms sweating. He had never shown anyone the full extent of his troubles, never admitted the depth of his inability to manage the ledgers. But what choice did he have? He opened the door to the study, and Kara stopped in the doorway, her eyes widening as she took in the chaos. Ledgers were piled on every surface. Papers were scattered across the desk. Unopened letters were stacked in corners. How long has it been like this? She asked, her voice carefully neutral. Since my steward left, Oliver said. 6 months. Kara walked to the desk and picked up one of the ledgers, flipping through it. Her expression grew more troubled with each page. She set down that ledger and picked up another, then another. These records are a mess, she said finally. There are entries that do not balance, numbers that make no sense, whole pages that seem to be missing. Either your steward was incompetent, or he was deliberately falsifying records. The latter, Oliver said. He stole a significant sum and fled. Kara looked at him sharply. Have you tried to reconstruct the accounts, figure out how much damage he did? This was the moment. Oliver took a breath, feeling his face flush with shame. I cannot, he said. I never learned to read properly. The letters do not make sense to me. I can handle numbers in my head, simple transactions, but this, he gestured at the ledgers. This is beyond me. He expected judgment, mockery, or at the very least pity, but Kara's expression remained calm and thoughtful. You have been running this estate for 3 years without being able to read the accounts, she asked. Yes. That must have been terrifying. The kindness in her voice surprised him. It was, he admitted. It is. I have creditors threatening to seize the estate. I owe debts I cannot even calculate, and in 1 week, if I cannot produce a full accounting and a payment plan, I lose everything. Kara set down the ledger she was holding and looked around the study again, her expression calculating. 1 week, she repeated. That is not much time. I know it is impossible, Oliver said, defeat creeping into his voice. I just thought, if you could at least help me understand what I owe, I could face it honestly. It is not impossible, Kara said. She moved to the desk and began sorting through papers with brisk efficiency. Difficult, yes. It will require long hours and a lot of work, but it can be done. Hope flared again in Oliver's chest. You would help me. On one condition, Kara said, turning to face him. You must be completely honest with me, about the debts, about the estate's assets, about everything. If I am to sort this out, I need full truth. Yes, Oliver said immediately. Anything. I will tell you everything I know. Then I will stay for a week and help you fix this mess, Kara said. She picked up the nearest ledger and opened it to the first page. Let us begin. They worked through the morning and into the afternoon, Kara asking questions while Oliver answered as best he could. She wanted to know about the estate's assets, the land, the livestock, the equipment, the harvests. She wanted to know about regular expenses, about the workers and their wages, about seasonal costs and market prices. Oliver told her everything, dredging up details he had not realized he remembered. Kara took notes in a hand that was neat and precise, creating new records to replace the corrupted ones. She cross-referenced ledgers, checked calculations, and slowly began to build a picture of the estate's true financial state. By evening, Oliver's head was spinning, but Kara seemed energized. She had filled several pages with notes and calculations, and she was muttering to herself as she worked, her brow furrowed in concentration. "You should eat something," Oliver said, realizing he had forgotten about meals entirely. Kara looked up, blinking as though surprised to find herself still in the study. "What time is it?" "Nearly sunset." "I did not realize." She set down her pen and stretched, her joints popping audibly. Yes, food would be good. They went to the kitchen, where Martha had left bread, cheese, and cold meat. They ate in comfortable silence, both too tired for conversation. Oliver found himself watching Kara, noticing small details, the way she ate with precise efficiency, the ink stains on her fingers, the small scar on her jaw. "Why are you doing this?" he asked finally. "You could have kept traveling this morning. You have no obligation to me." Kara considered the question while she finished chewing. "I told you. Fair exchange. You helped me when you did not have to. But this is much more than a fair exchange. One night's shelter versus a week of intensive work that is not balanced." She met his eyes, and he saw something complicated in her expression. "You treated me like a person," she said quietly. "Not a monster, not something to be feared or despised, just a person who needed help. You know how rare that is. Most humans see my green skin and my tusks, and that is all I am to them. An orc, an enemy, something less than human." Oliver felt shame at her words, knowing they were true. He had grown up hearing orcs described as savages, as creatures barely better than beasts. The wars had been fought in part over resources that both humans and orcs needed. Atrocities had been committed on both sides. The prejudices ran deep. "I am sorry," he said, "for how my people have treated yours." "And I am sorry for how my people have treated yours," Kara replied. "There is enough blame to go around. But you, Oliver Zarwell, you saw me as a person. That matters. And so I will help you because I can and because you deserve it." They returned to the study and worked late into the night. Kara's pen scratched steadily across paper, pausing only when she needed to ask Oliver a question or check a figure. Oliver watched her work, marveling at the speed and confidence with which she moved through the tangled accounts. It was well past midnight when Kara finally set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. "I need to sleep," she said. "My eyes are crossing." "Of course," Oliver said. "Thank you, Kara, truly." She smiled at him, a small expression but genuine. "We have made good progress. I have a clearer picture now of what we are dealing with. Tomorrow I will start on the actual reconstruction of the accounts." Oliver walked her to the stable, carrying a lantern to light their way. The night was cold and clear, stars brilliant overhead. "The room is comfortable?" he asked. "Very," Kara said. "Much better than sleeping on the road." At the stable door she paused. "Oliver, I want you to know, I think you have done remarkably well. Running an estate without being able to read the accounts, that takes intelligence and resourcefulness. Do not be ashamed of your difficulty with letters. Many people struggle with reading. It does not diminish your worth." Her words touched something deep in Oliver, a wound he had carried since childhood. "Thank you," he managed. "That means more than you know." She nodded and climbed the stairs to her room. Oliver returned to the house, feeling lighter than he had in months. The next day, Kara was up before dawn. Oliver found her already in the study, fresh papers laid out, ledgers organized into neat stacks. She had changed into the same clothes from the day before, and he made a mental note to see if any of his mother's old dresses might fit her. His mother had been a tall woman, strong from years of farm work. "Morning," Kara said without looking up from her work. "I have been thinking about your problem. The debts are substantial, but I believe they are manageable. Your steward was inflating numbers, charging you for expenses that never occurred and pocketing the difference. If we can prove that to your creditors, they may be willing to renegotiate." How do we prove it? Oliver asked. By reconstructing the true accounts, Kara said. We compare what Marston claimed you spent against what you actually purchased. I will need receipts, purchase orders, any physical evidence of transactions. Oliver felt his stomach sink. I do not have those. Marston handled all of that. He cannot have handled all of it, Kara said. Merchants keep their own records. The workers you hired would remember their wages. The feed suppliers would have invoices. We can reconstruct it from external sources. It was brilliant and obvious once she said it. Oliver nodded slowly. That will take time. We have a week, Kara said. It will be close, but I believe we can do it. However, I cannot do this alone. I need you to help me. You know this estate, know the workers, know the regular transactions. And you will need to visit the merchants in town, get copies of their records. I can do that, Oliver said. They divided the work. Kara would continue reconstructing the accounts from the ledgers, identifying discrepancies and fraudulent entries. Oliver would ride to the nearby town and speak with the merchants, requesting copies of their sales records for the past 3 years. Oliver set out after breakfast, riding his aging gelding along the familiar road to town. It was a 3-hour ride, and he used the time to think. If they could truly sort out the accounts, prove Marston's fraud, and negotiate with the creditors, he might actually save the estate. It seemed impossible yesterday. Today it felt within reach, all because of Kara. He found himself thinking about her more than was probably appropriate. The intensity in her amber eyes when she focused on a problem. The precise way she moved, nothing wasted. The kindness in her voice when she had told him not to be ashamed. He was attracted to her, he realized. And that was dangerous. Humans and orcs did not have romantic relationships. It was forbidden by both cultures, seen as betrayal or perversion. Even if his personal feelings did not care about such taboos, the practical reality was that Kara would leave at the end of the week. She had been clear about her intention to travel south, to find a place among her own people. He would be foolish to develop feelings for her, and yet he could not seem to stop himself. In town, he visited the feed supplier first. Mr. Aldrich was surprised to see him but willing to help once Oliver explained the situation. I always thought Marston was too smooth, Aldrich said, pulling out his ledgers. Here, these are all your purchases for the past 3 years. You are welcome to copy them. Oliver stared at the neat columns of numbers and felt his usual helplessness. Could I take these back to the estate? My new steward will copy them there. New steward, Aldrich raised an eyebrow. You found someone trustworthy, I hope. Very trustworthy, Oliver said firmly. He collected records from 6 different merchants' feed suppliers, equipment vendors, textile merchants who had provided cloth for the household. Everyone was willing to help, though several expressed concern about the estate's debts. News traveled fast in small towns. By the time Oliver returned to the estate, it was late afternoon. He found Kara in the study, surrounded by even more papers than before. She looked up when he entered and her face brightened. You got them. All of them, Oliver said, setting the borrowed ledgers on the desk. Every merchant I spoke with was willing to share their records. Excellent. Kara immediately began flipping through the ledgers, her eyes scanning rapidly. This is perfect. With these, I can prove exactly where Marston was falsifying numbers. She worked with fierce concentration, cross-referencing the merchant's records against Marston's entries. Oliver watched for a while, then quietly excused himself to help with the evening chores. The farm work did not stop just because he was dealing with a financial crisis. He fed the livestock, checked the fences, and spoke with Gregory about preparations for winter. The physical work was grounding, reminding him why he was fighting so hard to keep the estate. This land was more than just property. It was a way of life, a connection to his family's past, and a responsibility to the people who worked here. When he returned to the house after dark, he found Kara still in the study. She had lit several lamps and was writing furiously, her face set in determined lines. "Kara," he said gently, "you need to rest." "Almost finished," she said without looking up. "I am restructuring the entire account system, creating new ledgers that actually make sense. It can wait until tomorrow." "No, it cannot." She did look up then, and he saw exhaustion in her eyes but also excitement. "Oliver, I have found so much fraud. Marston was stealing from you systematically for years. He was claiming you spent 3 times what you actually did on feed, double on equipment, and he was inventing expenses entirely. Ghost workers who never existed, supplies that were never ordered. I can prove all of it." "That is incredible," Oliver said, "but Kara, you are exhausted. Please come eat something, rest." She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, all right, just let me finish this page." They ate a late supper together in the kitchen. Martha had left stew warming on the stove, and Oliver ladled out generous portions for both of them. Kara ate like she was starving, and Oliver realized she had probably forgotten to eat all day. "Tell me about your clan," he said, wanting to give her a break from thinking about accounts. "You said they value education," Kara nodded, swallowing her food. "We are the Ironwood clan. We have always been scholars and craftsmen rather than warriors. My grandmother was our clan's historian, keeper of stories and knowledge going back 10 generations. My mother is a master carpenter. My father teaches mathematics and philosophy to the young ones." "That is not how humans usually think of orc clans," Oliver admitted. "I know," Kara said with a slight smile. "Most humans think we are all savage raiders, and some orc clans are warrior cultures. That is true. But we are not all the same, any more than all humans are the same. The Ironwood clan has always believed that knowledge is the truest form of power. You cannot take knowledge from us with weapons. It stays in our minds and our traditions." "Why did your clan have to relocate?" Kara's expression darkened. "The wars pushed through our territory. Both human and orc armies wanted the land, wanted control of the river that runs through it. My clan refused to take sides, tried to remain neutral, but neutrality is seen as betrayal by everyone. We were attacked, our homes burned. We fled to the eastern wilderness and are rebuilding there." "And you did not go with them?" "I did at first," Kara said. "Helped them establish the new settlement, but I wanted to do more than just survive. I wanted to thrive, to use my skills. So I left to work among humans, to earn money I could send back to help the clan. I worked for Merchant Thorpe for 5 years, saved nearly everything I earned. When his son forced me to leave, I sent my savings to my clan and decided to try my luck in the South." Oliver felt a deep respect for her. She had left her home, worked in a foreign and often hostile culture, all to help her people. "Your clan must be very proud of you." Kara shrugged, but he could see the comment pleased her. "I hope so. I have not been able to send word to them in months. They may think I am dead. After this week, after we settle the estate's debts, I will pay you properly for your work," Oliver said. "You can send that money to your clan." "You do not have to, I do," Oliver interrupted. "Your work is worth significant payment, Kara. Do not undervalue yourself." She smiled at him, and Oliver felt warmth spread through his chest. He was falling for her, he realized. Already too deep to pull back, and he had no idea what to do about it. They returned to the study, and Kara continued to work while Oliver sat nearby, pretending to be useful. Mostly he just watched her, admiring the way her mind worked, the speed with which she processed information. Around midnight she finally set down her pen. "I think I have it," she said, her voice hoarse with fatigue. I have reconstructed the accounts for the past 3 years. I can show exactly what you actually owe versus what Marston claimed you owed. The difference is substantial, Oliver. Nearly 60% of your supposed debts are fraudulent. Oliver stared at her, hardly daring to believe. 60%? Yes, which means your actual debts are manageable. You have assets that can cover them this season's harvest, the livestock, some equipment you could sell. You would not be wealthy, but you would not lose the estate. Oliver stood abruptly and crossed to her, pulled by an impulse he could not name. Kara stood to meet him, and for a moment they were very close, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her amber eyes, could see the faint pattern of freckles across her green skin. "You saved me," he said quietly. "You saved everything." "We are not finished yet," Kara said, but her voice was soft. "We still have to present this to your creditors, convince them to accept the revised accounting. But it is possible now. Before you arrived, it was impossible." They stood there for a long moment, something electric in the air between them. Oliver wanted to touch her, to take her hand, to close the small distance between them, but he held himself back, uncertain and afraid. Kara broke the moment, stepping back slightly. "We should sleep. Tomorrow will be another long day." Oliver nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He walked her to the stable again, and they said good night with an awkwardness that had not been there before. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intense work. Kara finished reconstructing all the accounts, creating new ledgers that were models of clarity and organization. She taught Oliver her system, showing him how she had color-coded different types of expenses, how she had created simple visual markers that he could understand even without being able to read all the words. "You see here," she explained, pointing to a ledger page. "These marks indicate livestock expenses. These are for feed, these for equipment. Even if you cannot read every word, you can see at a glance what category an expense falls into." It was brilliant. For the first time in his life, Oliver looked at an account ledger and felt like he understood it. They also spent time together outside of work. Oliver showed Kara around the estate, introducing her to all the workers. To his relief, everyone treated her with respect and courtesy. Gregory in particular took a liking to her, often bringing her tea while she worked and engaging her in conversation about farming methods. "My people grow many of the same crops you do," Kara told him, "but we use different techniques for soil management. Let me show you." She sketched out diagrams in the dirt, explaining Orc agricultural practices. Gregory listened with genuine interest, asking questions, treating her knowledge with respect. Oliver also gave Kara some of his mother's old clothes. The dresses fit reasonably well with some minor adjustments, and Kara seemed touchingly pleased to have clean clothes to change into. "Your mother had good taste," she said, smoothing down the skirt of a simple green dress. "This is lovely. It suits you," Oliver said, and meant it. The dress brought out the richness of her green skin, and she looked more comfortable than she had in her travel-worn trousers and tunic. As the days passed, Oliver became more and more aware of his growing feelings for Kara. He found excuses to be near her, loved the sound of her laugh when something amused her, treasured the moments when she would look up from her work and smile at him. He thought perhaps she felt something too, in the way her eyes would linger on him, in the careful distance she maintained, as though afraid to get too close. But neither of them spoke of it. The week was ticking away, and soon she would leave. Speaking of feelings would only make that parting harder. On the 5th day, Lord Pemberton arrived unexpectedly. Oliver was in the barn when one of the workers came running to tell him a fine carriage had pulled up to the house. Oliver's heart sank. He had 2 more days before Pemberton was supposed to come. He hurried to the house, finding Pemberton already in the front hall, looking around with a proprietary air that made Oliver's blood boil. Lord Pemberton was a man in his 50s, wealthy and accustomed to getting his way. He owned the largest estate in the region and had been trying to acquire Oliver's land for years. "Zarwell," Pemberton said, his tone dismissive. "I thought I would come early, see if you had managed to scrape together a solution to your little problem, though I suspect not." "I have 2 more days," Oliver said, keeping his voice level with effort. "Yes, well, I am a busy man. I thought we could settle things now. I have brought the paperwork for the sale. You sign over the estate, I will cover your debts, and you can walk away with a small sum to start over elsewhere." "I am not selling," Oliver said. Pemberton's expression hardened. "Do not be a fool, boy. You have no choice. You cannot possibly have sorted out that mess of accounts left by your steward. Everyone knows you are barely literate. How could you manage the ledgers?" The insult stung, even though it was partially true. But before Oliver could respond, Kara appeared in the doorway of the study. "Master Zarwell has sorted out the accounts quite well," she said coolly. "With my assistance." Pemberton's eyes widened when he saw her. "An orc." He turned to Oliver with something like horror. "You have an orc in your house, working on your accounts. Have you lost your mind?" "Miss Kara is my steward," Oliver said, the title coming to him in the moment. "And she is twice the accountant your man Marston ever was." "This is outrageous," Pemberton sputtered. "You cannot seriously expect anyone to accept accounts prepared by an orc. No creditor would." "The accounts are accurate and properly documented," Kara interrupted. "I would be happy to review them with you, Lord Pemberton, if you doubt my competence." Something in her tone, calm and professional, seemed to throw Pemberton off balance. He looked between Kara and Oliver, his face red with anger. "This changes nothing," he said finally. "You still owe substantial debts, and I will be here in 2 days to collect. If you cannot pay, the estate is mine." He stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Oliver let out a breath he did not realize he had been holding. "I am sorry," he said to Kara. "The way he spoke to you was unacceptable." "I have dealt with worse," Kara said, though he could see the tension in her shoulders. "But Oliver, we need to finish the accounts today. We cannot wait until the last minute. If Pemberton is looking for any excuse to seize the estate, we need to have everything perfect." They worked through that day and night without stopping. Kara reviewed every calculation 3 times, checked every entry, made sure every piece of documentation was in order. Oliver helped where he could, gathering receipts, providing information about assets. By dawn of the 6th day, it was complete. Kara had created a comprehensive accounting of the estate's true financial state, a detailed explanation of Marston's fraud, and a proposal for how Oliver could satisfy his legitimate debts using the estate's assets. "This is it," Kara said, placing the final ledger on top of the stack. "This is everything. The evidence is irrefutable. Any honest examination will show that you were defrauded and that your actual debts are manageable." Oliver looked at the neat stack of ledgers, at the careful work that represented countless hours of effort. "I do not know how to thank you," he said. "You do not have to thank me," Kara said. "I told you this is fair exchange." "It is so much more than that," Oliver said. He moved closer to her, reached out to take her hand. She did not pull away. "Kara," the door to the study burst open. Thomas stood there, his face pale. "Master Zarwell, there is trouble in town. The creditors have called a meeting. They want you there immediately. They are talking about seizing the estate today, not waiting until tomorrow." Oliver's stomach dropped. "Pemberton," he said. "He must have pressured them to move early." "We need to go now," Kara said, already gathering the ledgers. "We will present the accounts to all of them at once." It is actually better this way. We can address all their concerns together." They loaded the ledgers into a wagon and set off for town immediately, Oliver driving while Kara sat beside him, clutching the precious documents. The 3-hour ride felt like an eternity. Oliver's mind was racing, rehearsing arguments, trying to prepare for every possible objection. "What if they refuse to accept the accounts?" he asked. "They will not," Kara said with confidence. "The evidence is too clear. Any honest man will see the truth. And if they are not honest—" Kara looked at him steadily. "Then we will fight. You are not alone in this, Oliver. I will stand with you." Her words gave him strength. They arrived in town just before noon and headed straight to the town hall where the creditors had gathered. Oliver carried the ledgers while Kara walked beside him, her head held high despite the stares and whispers that followed them. The meeting room was crowded. Oliver recognized all his major creditors: Master Harrison, who supplied feed; Mistress Clark, who provided household goods; Mr. Aldrich, whom he had already visited, and several others. Lord Pemberton stood at the front of the room, looking satisfied. "Zarwell," Pemberton said when Oliver entered. "Good of you to join us. We were just discussing how best to dispose of your estate to satisfy your debts." "You have no right to dispose of anything," Oliver said. He set the ledgers on the table with a solid thunk. "I have brought a complete accounting of the estate's finances. These ledgers prove that my former steward, Marston, was systematically defrauding me for years. My actual debts are less than half of what has been claimed." A murmur ran through the room. Master Harrison leaned forward. "Let me see those." Kara stepped forward. "I prepared these accounts. I would be happy to review them with all of you and answer any questions." "You prepared them?" one of the creditors, Mr. Foster, asked skeptically. "You are an orc." "I am an orc who worked as head accountant for Merchant Thorpe in the Northern Territories for 5 years, Kara said evenly. "My competence is not determined by the color of my skin." She opened the first ledger and began to explain, walking them through the evidence of Marston's fraud. She showed how he had inflated expenses, invented purchases, and pocketed the difference. She cross-referenced entries with the merchant's own records, demonstrating the discrepancies. She presented everything with such clarity and confidence that even the most skeptical creditors began to nod along. Oliver watched her with admiration and something deeper, something that felt like love. She was magnificent, articulate, knowledgeable, completely unafraid. She commanded the room, and even those who had initially dismissed her because she was orc were forced to take her seriously. The presentation took nearly 2 hours. By the end, every creditor had reviewed the ledgers, asked their questions, and examined the evidence. Master Harrison was the first to speak. "This is very thorough work," he said, "and the evidence of fraud is convincing. Zarwell, according to these accounts, you owe me significantly less than I thought. If the amounts here are correct, I would be willing to accept payment over the next year." One by one, the other creditors agreed. The accounts were clear, the evidence was solid, and they could see that Oliver had been the victim of Marston's theft, not a willing participant. They negotiated terms, set up payment schedules, and by the end of the meeting, Oliver had agreements with all of his creditors. All except Lord Pemberton, who had grown increasingly red-faced as the meeting progressed. "This is absurd," Pemberton said. "You are all being fooled by an orc's trickery. These accounts could be completely fabricated." "I verified the numbers against my own records," Mr. Aldrich said mildly. "They are accurate." "As did I," Mistress Clark added. "The work is legitimate, Lord Pemberton." Pemberton turned his glare on Oliver. "You think you have won. You still have nothing. You will be struggling to pay these debts for years. You would be better off selling to me." "I will manage," Oliver said. The estate is mine, and it will remain mine. Pemberton stormed out, and the remaining creditors congratulated Oliver. Several of them nodded respectfully to Kara, acknowledging the quality of her work. When they finally left the town hall, Oliver felt like he could breathe for the first time in months. They loaded the ledgers back into the wagon and started the journey home. They were an hour out of town, the sun sinking toward the western hills, when Oliver finally spoke. "You did it," he said. "You actually did it. You saved the estate." "We did it," Kara corrected. "It was your honesty and cooperation that made it possible, and the loyalty of your workers who vouched for you, and the fairness of your creditors who were willing to listen to reason." "But mostly it was you," Oliver insisted. He pulled the wagon to a stop on the side of the road and turned to face her. "Kara, I need to tell you something." She looked at him, her amber eyes reflecting the late afternoon sun. "What?" "I do not want you to leave," he said, the words tumbling out. "I know you have plans to travel south. I know you want to find a place among your own people, but I am asking you to stay. Stay here at the estate. Be my steward. Help me run this place properly. I will pay you well, give you a good room in the house, treat you with all the respect you deserve." Kara was quiet for a long moment. "Is that all you are asking?" she said finally, her voice soft. Oliver's heart was pounding. "No," he admitted. "It is not all. Kara, I have feelings for you. I think I have since the first night, when you looked at me with those amber eyes and ate bread like it was the finest meal you had ever tasted. I know it is impossible. I know our peoples do not mix, that there would be judgment and hardship. But I cannot let you leave without telling you. I care for you more than I should, more than is probably wise." Kara reached out and took his hand, her grip strong and warm. "Oliver," she said. "I feel the same way," his breath caught. "You do?" "Of course I do. How could I not? You saw me as a person when you had every excuse not to. You are kind, hardworking, honest. You care deeply about your land and your people, and you have the courage to admit when you need help, which is rarer than you might think." "Then stay," Oliver said. "Please, stay with me. We will figure out the rest." "My clan," Kara said hesitantly. "I cannot abandon them. I need to send them money, support them." "Then we will send them money. A portion of the estate's profits every season, as much as we can afford. Your clan will benefit from your work here." Kara's eyes were bright, and Oliver realized with surprise that she was near tears. "You would do that? Help my clan, of course. They are your family. And if you truly stay with me, then they become my family too." Kara laughed, a sound of pure joy, and then she was kissing him. Her tusks were unfamiliar against his lips, but her mouth was warm and eager, and Oliver kissed her back with all the pent-up emotion of the past week. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Kara was smiling. "I will stay," she said. "I will be your steward and your friend, and if you will have me, something more." "Something much more," Oliver said. He kissed her again, softer this time, tender. "I love you, Kara." "I love you too," she said. "My ridiculous human who cannot read his own ledgers." Oliver laughed. "My brilliant orc who fixed 10 years of debts in 1 week." They continued the journey home, sitting close together on the wagon seat, hands entwined. The sun set in a blaze of orange and gold, and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Oliver felt a peace he had not experienced in years, a sense that everything had finally fallen into place. When they arrived at the estate, Gregory and Martha were waiting, anxious to hear the news. Oliver told them about the meeting, about the creditors agreeing to new terms, about the estate being saved. Gregory let out a cheer and embraced Oliver, then carefully, respectfully embraced Kara as well. "Welcome home, Miss Kara," he said. "Just Kara, please," she said, smiling. "And thank you. It is good to be home." That evening they gathered in the kitchen for a celebratory meal. Martha prepared a feast with the best food the estate had to offer: roasted chicken, fresh bread, vegetables from the garden, and a berry pie that was Martha's specialty. They invited all the workers to join them, and the kitchen was crowded and loud with conversation and laughter. Oliver sat at the head of the table with Kara at his side, and he could not remember ever feeling so content. These were his people, this was his land, and beside him was the woman he loved. Everything that mattered was right here in this room. After the meal, Oliver and Kara walked together through the estate under the starlight. They talked about the future, about plans for the farm, about how to continue improving the accounts and management systems. "We should create a school," Kara said suddenly, "for the workers' children. Teach them to read and work with numbers. Educate the next generation." "That is a wonderful idea," Oliver said. "We could build a small schoolhouse near the main barn. You could teach them." "You could help," Kara said. "It is not too late for you to learn to read properly. Not quickly, perhaps, but with time and patience. I could teach you." Oliver felt a flutter of the old shame, but also hope. "You think I could learn?" "I know you could," Kara said firmly. "Your difficulty with reading does not mean you are incapable of learning. It just means you learn differently. We will find methods that work for you." They stopped near the pasture fence, leaning against the wood and looking out over the fields. A gentle breeze carried the scent of earth and growing things. "I used to think this place was a burden," Oliver admitted. "A responsibility I was failing at. But now, with you here, it feels like possibility, like we could build something truly good." "We will," Kara said. She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Together." They stood there for a long time, content in the silence and each other's presence. Finally, as the night grew cold, they walked back to the house. At the door, Oliver hesitated. "Will you stay in the house?" he asked. "There is a room on the second floor, much more comfortable than the room above the stable." "I would like that," Kara said. Oliver showed her to the room that had once been his mother's sewing room. It was small but pleasant, with a window that overlooked the garden and a comfortable bed. Kara set down her satchel, which she had carried with her everywhere since she arrived. "What is in that?" Oliver asked, curious. "You have guarded it so carefully." Kara opened the satchel and pulled out several books, their covers worn with age and use. "These are our clan's histories," she said. "Stories and records going back generations. When we had to flee our home, my grandmother gave these to me, told me to keep them safe. They are precious. They are our memory." Oliver looked at the books with new understanding. "You carried your people's history with you all this time." "It was all I could save," Kara said quietly. "Everything else was lost or left behind. But these I kept safe." "We will build a proper library here," Oliver said. "A place where those books can be preserved and honored. And perhaps someday your clan could send more of their records and we could house them here, keep them safe." Kara's eyes shone. "You would do that?" "This estate is your home now too," Oliver said. "Your history is part of our history. We will protect it together." Kara set the books carefully on the small desk in the room, then turned and embraced Oliver. He held her close, feeling the solidity of her, the reality of her presence in his life. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, "for seeing me, for valuing what I am." "Thank you for staying," Oliver whispered back, "for choosing me." They stood together in the quiet room, and Oliver knew with absolute certainty that this was right. Not easy, perhaps. There would be challenges ahead, prejudice to face from those who could not accept a relationship between human and orc, practical difficulties in merging their different worlds. But none of that mattered compared to what they had found together. The next days settled into a new rhythm. Kara took over the management of the estate's accounts completely, creating systems that were clear and functional. She also began teaching Oliver to read, working with him in the early mornings before the day's work began. Progress was slow, but Oliver found that with Kara's patient instruction and specialized methods, he could begin to recognize letters and simple words. She used colored inks to distinguish different letters, created tactile cards that helped him remember shapes, and never once made him feel ashamed of his struggles. Slowly, painfully, Oliver began to learn. Word spread quickly through the region that Oliver had an orc working as his steward. Some of the neighbors were scandalized, refusing to visit or do business with the estate. But others, particularly the younger generation, were curious and respectful. Several other farmers approached Kara for advice on their own accounts, and she helped them with the same efficiency and skill she had shown Oliver. Lord Pemberton remained an enemy, spreading rumors and trying to damage Oliver's reputation. But the quality of Kara's work and the evidence of the estate's improving fortunes spoke louder than gossip. The debts were being paid on schedule, the farm was running more efficiently than it had in years, and Oliver had never been happier. 3 months after Kara's arrival on a cold winter evening, Oliver proposed. He did it in the study, surrounded by the ledgers that had brought them together, and offered her a ring that had belonged to his mother. "Marry me," he said simply. "Be my wife, my partner, my love. Build a life with me here." Kara said yes without hesitation. They were married in the spring, in a small ceremony attended by the estate workers and a handful of friends from town. Gregory walked Kara down the aisle since her own family could not be there. Martha cried through the entire ceremony. And when the local priest pronounced them husband and wife, Oliver kissed his orc bride and felt complete in a way he never had before. The first year of their marriage was not easy. They faced prejudice, anger, and sometimes outright hostility. There were people in town who refused to do business with them, neighbors who cut off relations. But there were also people who accepted them, who saw the love between them and chose to honor it rather than condemn it. Kara wrote to her clan, telling them about Oliver and the estate, about her life and happiness. To Oliver's joy, they wrote back, accepting their relationship and blessing the marriage. Kara's parents sent gifts, beautiful carvings made by her mother, books copied by her father. And they sent news that the clan was thriving in their new settlement, in no small part because of the money Kara had been sending them. True to his word, Oliver continued to send a portion of the estate's profits to Kara's clan every season. It was a significant sum, but one he gladly gave. They were family now, bound together by Kara's love for both him and her people. The schoolhouse was built that summer, a sturdy structure with large windows and space for 20 children. Kara began teaching immediately, instructing the workers' children in reading, mathematics, and practical skills. To everyone's surprise, several families from town also sent their children, won over by Kara's reputation as an excellent teacher. Oliver continued his own education, slowly learning to read under Kara's patient instruction. It took him 2 years, but eventually he could read simple texts and understand the estate's accounts without assistance. The victory was sweet, made more so because Kara was there to celebrate every small breakthrough with him. The estate prospered. With Kara's management, they paid off all the debts within 3 years. The farm became known for its efficiency and fair treatment of workers. Other estates began copying their methods, and Kara became a respected consultant throughout the region. Lord Pemberton eventually left the area, relocating to the capital after a series of his own financial scandals came to light. Oliver was content to let him go without grudges, too happy with his own life to hold onto anger. In their 4th year of marriage, Kara became pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult. Hybrid pregnancies between humans and orcs were rare and carried risks, but Kara was strong, and Martha proved to be an excellent midwife. In the dead of winter, Kara gave birth to a healthy daughter. They named her illiterate after Oliver's mother. She had Kara's green skin and pointed ears, but Oliver's brown eyes and fine features. She was beautiful, and Oliver loved her with a fierceness that surprised him. Illiterate's birth seemed to shift something in the community. It was one thing to condemn a marriage between human and orc in the abstract. It was another thing entirely to look at a child, innocent and perfect, and maintain that prejudice. People who had shunned the estate began to soften, began to visit, began to bring gifts for the baby. Not everyone accepted them. There would always be those who saw Kara as a monster and Oliver as a traitor. But gradually, slowly, the community around them began to change. Children who learned in Kara's schoolhouse grew up seeing orcs as people, not threats. Farmers who worked with Kara came to respect her knowledge and skill. And little, illiterate became a symbol of possibility, of a future where perhaps humans and orcs could live together in peace. 5 years after Kara first collapsed on the road near his estate, Oliver stood in his study, the same study where he had once stared at ledgers he could not read, despairing and alone. Now the room was organized and efficient, the accounts in perfect order. Kara sat at the desk, working on the quarterly reports, while illiterate played on the floor with wooden blocks. Oliver looked at his wife and daughter and felt gratitude so profound it brought tears to his eyes. He had been saved, not just financially but in every way that mattered. Kara had fixed more than 10 years of debts. She had fixed his life, his heart, his understanding of what was possible. "What are you thinking about?" Kara asked, looking up from her work with a smile. "How lucky I am," Oliver said honestly. "How none of this would have happened if you had not collapsed on my road that evening." "Fate," Kara said, "or perhaps just luck. Either way, I am grateful too." She stood and came to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. Illiterate abandoned her blocks and toddled over, demanding to be picked up. Oliver scooped up his daughter while keeping one arm around his wife, and the three of them stood together in the evening light streaming through the study window. "I love you," Oliver said to both of them. "We love you too," Kara replied. That night, after illiterate was asleep and the house was quiet, Oliver and Kara sat together in the main hall by the fire. They talked about their plans for the coming year, expanding the schoolhouse, possibly hiring another teacher, sending another substantial gift to Kara's clan to help them purchase new equipment. "Sometimes I cannot believe this is real," Oliver admitted, "that I get to have this life with you." "It is real," Kara said. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together, green skin against tan, different but complementary. "We made it real. We fought for it, worked for it, and we continue to choose it every day." "I will always choose you," Oliver said. "And I will always choose you," Kara replied. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the fire burn low, and Oliver thought about how much had changed in 5 years. He had gone from desperate and alone to happy and surrounded by love. The estate was thriving. Their daughter was healthy. And Kara, his brilliant, fierce, beautiful orc wife, had shown him that the world held more possibility than he had ever imagined. In the morning, there would be work to do. Fields to manage, accounts to balance, children to teach. But tonight, Oliver was content to simply be present in this moment, with the woman he loved beside him and a future full of hope stretching out before them. The fire crackled softly in the hearth. Outside, snow began to fall, dusting the estate in white. And in the warm safety of their home, Oliver and Kara held each other close, grateful for the unexpected twist of fate that had brought them together. and committed to building a life that honored both their peoples and blazed a trail for others who might someday follow. Years later, when Alina was old enough to understand, she would ask her parents how they met. Kara would tell her about collapsing on a road, exhausted and hungry, and being taken in by a kind human who saw her as a person rather than a monster. Oliver would tell her about drowning in debts he could not read, and how an orc woman had fixed 10 years of chaos in one impossible week. And together, they would tell her the most important part, that love can bridge any divide, that courage means choosing compassion over fear, and that sometimes the help we need comes from the most unexpected places. Alina would grow up to be a bridge between the human and orc communities, using her unique heritage to foster understanding and cooperation. She would eventually take over the management of the estate, expanding Kara's school into a full academy that educated children of all races. And she would tell her own children the story of how their grandmother had saved their grandfather, not just from financial ruin, but from a life without love, without hope, and without the courage to imagine a better world. But all of that was still to come. For now, on this quiet winter evening, Oliver and Kara were simply two people who had found each other against all odds, who had chosen love despite every obstacle, and who were building a life together one day at a time. The ledgers were balanced, the debts were paid, and their future stretched out before them, full of possibility and promise. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the estate in peaceful white. Inside, the fire burned warm. And in the morning, they would wake together and face whatever challenges came their way, secure in the knowledge that they were not alone, that they had each other, and that love, real, true, hard-won love, was the greatest asset of all. Oliver pulled Kara closer, breathing in the familiar scent of her, feeling the solid warmth of her body against his. This was home. Not the estate, not the land, not the house. This woman, this life they had built together, this family they were creating, that was home. "Thank you," he whispered into her hair, "for everything." Kara tilted her face up to kiss him gently. "Thank you for giving me a reason to stay." They remained by the fire until it burned down to embers, reluctant to break the spell of this perfect, quiet moment. When they finally rose to go to bed, they walked hand in hand through the house, checking on Alina one last time before retiring to their own room. As Oliver drifted off to sleep with Kara in his arms, his last thought was one of profound gratitude. He had been saved, redeemed, and given a second chance at life. And all because an orc woman had collapsed on his road, and he had chosen kindness over prejudice. It was a simple choice, really, but it had changed everything. The estate stood solid and prosperous in the moonlight, its debts cleared, its future secure. Inside, a family slept peacefully, human, orc, and the child who was both and neither, who represented a future where such distinctions might matter less than the content of one's character. And in the study, the ledgers sat in perfect order on their shelves, a testament to Kara's skill and the power of knowledge. They told a story of fraud uncovered and debts resolved. But more importantly, they told a story of trust, of partnership, of two people working together to build something greater than either could have achieved alone. It was, in the end, a love story written in numbers and balanced accounts, in cleared debts and rebuilt lives. And like all the best love stories, it was true.